Most people see only the external form, the kicks, the punches, the movies. But within me has always existed what I call the divided self. This concept came to me during meditation after my back injury. The divided self is not simply the duality that Westerners often misinterpret in Eastern philosophy. It is a recognition that within each of us exists not two, but multiple selves that both oppose and harmonize with each other. The self of confidence and the self of doubt are not merely two sides of a coin. They are two voices in an eternal dialogue. What few understand is that I cultivate this division deliberately. I do not seek to silence the doubtful self, as Western psychology often suggests. Instead, I have learned to create a council of these selves, allowing them to speak and challenge each other. This internal dialogue is the source of true innovation. When doubt speaks within me, I do not silence it. I ask it to elaborate, to explain precisely what it fears and why. In doing so, the doubt transforms from a vague, paralyzing fog into a specific concern that can be addressed. This is the first transformation, from nameless dread to articulated challenge. My first taste of this understanding came not from martial arts, but from my childhood training in Chinese opera in Hong Kong. Few people know this was my initial artistic discipline. The training was brutal by Western standards. 16-hour days, physical punishments for imprecision. My sifu in opera, Master Jim, had a method that confused me as a child. When we performed a sequence perfectly, he would suddenly change the requirements, making what was just successful now a failure. I once performed a difficult acrobatic sequence flawlessly after weeks of practice. Instead of praise, he said, "Now do it with a cup of tea on your head, without spilling a drop." I was furious. It seemed arbitrary and cruel. But years later, I realized he was teaching me what I now call productive failure, the deliberate cultivation of new challenges that force growth. He was training me not just in opera, but in embracing the discomfort of constant improvement. This philosophy was severely tested when I came to America. In 1964, I had a screen test for a television series. The producers wanted an authentic Asian man who could also be accepted by American audiences. I had prepared extensively, memorizing pages of dialogue, practicing facial expressions in mirrors for hours. But when the cameras rolled and the unfamiliar studio lights bore down, something unprecedented happened. My mind emptied completely. I stood frozen, unable to recall a single line. The American director waited patiently, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. The silence lasted perhaps 10 seconds, but in that moment, I felt disconnected not just from America, but from myself. My body, the instrument I had spent my life perfecting, had betrayed me. Walking back to my small apartment in Chinatown afterward, shame became a physical sensation, a tightness in my chest, a burning in my stomach. The producers sent a polite rejection the next day. I had allowed doubt to become not just my experience, but my identity. This failure haunted me for months until I realized something crucial. I had been treating doubt as an enemy to be conquered rather than a messenger to be heard. My training had taught me to overcome physical limitations, but I had never developed a methodology for navigating internal obstacles. When my back injury came in 1970, this understanding became vital to my survival. The doctors were blunt. I might never practice martial arts again. For 6 months, I was confined to bed, unable to train, teach, or work on films. This was my darkest period of doubt. My bedroom in Hong Kong overlooked a garden with bamboo. Hour after hour, I would watch it from my window during typhoon season. The mighty oak trees would crack and sometimes fall, while the bamboo bent nearly to the ground but rarely broke. This observation led me to develop what I now call my bamboo philosophy. In traditional Chinese medicine, which my father had studied extensively, the strongest trees break in violent storms while bamboo survives. The Western mind equates strength with rigidity, with standing firm against challenges. The Eastern understanding, which I had forgotten until my injury reminded me, is that true strength comes from flexibility. The bamboo philosophy states that mastery requires 3 types of flexibility. First is physical flexibility, the body's ability to adapt and move. Second is methodological flexibility, the willingness to abandon techniques that no longer serve you, even if you've invested years in perfecting them. This is why I eventually abandoned traditional kung fu forms. But the third flexibility is the most important and least understood: psychological flexibility, the capacity to hold contradictory thoughts simultaneously without being paralyzed by them, to be both certain and uncertain, to move decisively while remaining open to correction. My injury forced me to develop this third flexibility. Unable to train physically, I had to reimagine my entire approach to martial arts. This period of enforced reflection became the foundation of Jeet Kune Do, not as a new style as many mistakenly believe, but as a rejection of style itself, a methodology of continuous adaptation. The Western mind sees doubt as weakness, something to conquer or eliminate. The Eastern mind understands that doubt is like the space between musical notes. Without it, there is no harmony, only noise. Every master you admire has walked hand in hand with doubt. The difference is not that they felt no doubt. It's that they developed a relationship with doubt that transformed it from obstacle to instrument. Many have heard my phrase, "be like water," but few understand its deeper application as a methodology for confronting doubt. Most assume it is merely a philosophical statement about adaptability. It is actually a precise system I developed during my recovery, what I call the 3 states of water method. Water exists in 3 states: ice, liquid, and vapor. Each state represents a phase in our relationship with doubt. Most practitioners never progress beyond the first state, remaining frozen in their development. The first phase is what I call the ice state. This is when doubt has crystallized your movement, your thinking, your progression. Most people experience doubt as paralysis, a freezing of action. The mind becomes rigid, fixed on what might go wrong rather than what might be possible. I experienced this ice state most acutely during my recovery. For weeks, I could not even visualize myself performing martial arts again. The doubt had literally frozen my imagination. I could not see past the limitation. In this ice state, doubt appears solid, unmovable, a fixed reality. The first breakthrough comes in recognizing this freezing for what it is: merely one state of water, not its permanent condition. Traditional Chinese medicine, which my father studied deeply, speaks of qi, life energy, as having qualities similar to water. When qi is blocked, disease manifests. When it flows, health returns. My grandfather, who was both a healer and philosopher, taught me that emotional states like doubt create similar blockages in our mental and physical systems. The ice state represents this blockage, doubt that has solidified into obstruction. The transition to the second phase, what I call the liquid state, begins with the recognition that even ice can be returned to flowing water. This requires specific methodology, not just philosophical understanding. In the liquid state, doubt becomes fluid rather than solid. It moves, it adapts, it seeks new channels. This is when doubt transforms from obstruction into exploration. The question shifts from "why can't I?" to "how might I?" This is where possibility enters the conversation with doubt. To achieve this transition, I developed a technique based on an ancient practice my family transmitted through generations, what we called ancestral mirror reflection. My grandfather first showed me this when I was 9 years old, struggling with a particularly difficult sequence in opera training. He placed me before a mirror and had me write my doubts with a calligraphy brush, not in my journal, but directly on the mirror, over my own reflection. "See how your doubt literally obscures your true self," he told me. Then he had me use water to dissolve the characters, watching as they transformed from fixed marks to flowing streams down the mirror's surface. "Your doubt is not solid," he said. "It can flow, and in flowing it can find new channels, new pathways forward." This physical representation of transforming doubt from fixed to fluid became central to my methodology. When confined to bed after my injury, I adapted this practice. Each morning I would write my doubts on rice paper with ink, then place the paper in water, watching as the once solid characters dissolved and flowed. This ritual physically demonstrated what needed to happen mentally, the transformation of rigid doubt into flowing possibility. To facilitate this transition, I also developed a specific breathing pattern with 3 positions. The first position, lying flat with palms up, represents surrender to the existing doubt. The second position, sitting with spine erect and hands forming a vessel shape, represents collecting the doubt into conscious awareness. The third position, standing with arms extending outward, represents transforming that doubt into directed energy. With each breath cycled through these positions, doubt shifts from paralyzing to energizing. I call this breathing doubt into strength. It recognizes that doubt contains energy, but energy that has been frozen rather than channeled. The final phase is what I call the vapor state. This is where doubt transforms beyond liquid flexibility into expansive possibility. Vapor is water that has transcended its previous limitations. It is no longer bound by the shape of its container. It expands, fills available space, rises beyond previous boundaries. In the vapor state, doubt becomes a form of vision. It allows you to see possibilities that confidence alone might miss. This is doubt's highest function, not as obstacle, not even as guide, but as expansion of perception itself. Few practitioners ever reach this state in their relationship with doubt. It requires what I call contextual doubt mapping, the ability to visualize doubt not as an enemy to defeat, but as geography to navigate. Just as a cartographer sees mountains not as obstacles, but as features of the landscape to be mapped and traversed, the master sees doubt as terrain to be known rather than territory to be conquered. During my 6 months of recovery, I developed a specific visualization practice for this mapping. I would close my eyes and mentally project my doubts as a 3-dimensional landscape around me. Some doubts appeared as mountains, others as rivers, others as dense forests. Rather than trying to eliminate these features, I would mentally walk among them, exploring their contours, discovering their hidden valleys and unexpected vistas. This practice revealed something profound. Doubt, when fully mapped, contains within it pathways that certainty cannot see. The mountain of doubt, once climbed, offers perspectives unavailable from the flatlands of certainty. My grandfather taught me that water has wisdom in all its forms. Ice preserves, liquid nurtures, vapor transcends. So too with doubt. It can freeze us, or flow through us, or elevate us beyond our perceived limitations, depending not on the doubt itself, but on our relationship to it. The Western martial practitioner often sees doubt as the enemy of mastery. The Eastern tradition understands that doubt is not separate from mastery, but integral to it. The shadow that gives depth to form, the space that gives meaning to structure. Without doubt, confidence is merely untested assumption. Water does not fight obstacles. It acknowledges them and finds the path of least resistance around them. This is the essence of my water method, not the elimination of doubt, but the transformation of our relationship to it. From ice to liquid to vapor, from paralysis to flow to expansion. Throughout my journey, I have observed something that Western psychology is only beginning to understand, that the mind and body are not separate systems, but a single, integrated intelligence. This understanding applies profoundly to our experience of doubt. What I discovered during my most intense periods of doubt was what I call the neuromuscular chain of doubt. This is not metaphorical, but literal. When doubt appears in the mind, it instantly creates a corresponding pattern in the body. Specific muscle groups activate in predictable sequences. The shoulders elevate slightly. The breathing becomes shallow, moving from the diaphragm to the upper chest. The jaw tightens, the eyes narrow, blood flow to the extremities decreases. These physical manifestations are not merely symptoms of doubt. They are doubt itself expressing through the body. This insight came to me not through abstract theory, but through direct observation of my own responses during periods of intense uncertainty. I would place myself before a mirror and deliberately trigger doubt by attempting movements my injury made impossible. Then I would observe with scientific precision how my body responded. What I found was remarkable. The doubt that began as a thought immediately cascaded through my nervous system in a predictable pattern, creating a physical state that then reinforced the mental doubt. The mind creates tension in the body, and the tense body then signals danger to the mind, creating a self-perpetuating cycle. Breaking this cycle required developing what I now call the 5-point release system. This is a precise sequence of interventions at 5 key points in the body where doubt manifests most powerfully: the jaw, the shoulders, the diaphragm, the hands, and the eyes. When doubt appears, I first release tension in the jaw, consciously separating the upper and lower teeth slightly and relaxing the tongue. This immediately disrupts the tension pattern that signals danger to the brain. Second, I drop the shoulders down and slightly back, opening the chest. Third, I shift breathing from the upper chest back to the diaphragm with 3 deliberate breaths. Fourth, I open the hands, releasing any clenched tension. Finally, I soften the focus of the eyes, expanding peripheral vision. This 5-point sequence, performed in precise order, literally dissolves the physical component of doubt. Without its physical anchor, the mental aspect of doubt becomes far more malleable. What was solid becomes fluid. What was overwhelming becomes manageable. But dissolution is only the first step. The second is reconstruction, building new neuromuscular patterns that support capability rather than limitation. For this, I developed a practice I call micro-failure training. Traditional training seeks to avoid failure. Micro-failure training deliberately induces it in small, manageable doses. I would set tasks for myself that I knew would trigger doubt, but were achievable with effort. For example, during recovery, I would attempt to hold a cup of tea perfectly still for increasingly longer periods, despite the tremors in my hand from nerve damage. Each small failure created doubt. Each overcoming of that doubt created not just success, but a new physical pattern, a new relationship between mind and body in the presence of uncertainty. Over time, these new patterns become default responses. The body learns that doubt is not a signal to freeze, but a signal to adapt. This approach fundamentally differs from mere exposure therapy. It is not about becoming numb to doubt through repetition. It is about rewriting the very language through which mind and body communicate in the presence of doubt. When I began teaching again after my recovery, this understanding transformed my approach completely. I abandoned conventional teaching methods that emphasized rote repetition and developed what my senior students called the reversal approach. In traditional martial arts instruction, teachers demonstrate the correct form and students attempt to replicate it. In my reversed methodology, I would sometimes deliberately demonstrate incorrect forms or impossible techniques, then watch as students struggled with the doubt this created. Which students froze in confusion? Which adapted and explored? Which asked questions? Their responses revealed more about their relationship with doubt than any technical execution could show. I would assign tasks that seemed straightforward, but contained hidden challenges designed specifically to trigger doubt. For example, I might ask a student to perform a simple punch 500 times. Around repetition 300, doubt inevitably appears. Doubt about form, about purpose, about capacity. How the student navigated this doubt revealed everything about their potential. What astonished me was the direct correlation I discovered between doubt intensity and breakthrough potential. The students who experienced the most acute doubt during these exercises, who visibly struggled with uncertainty, were invariably those who experienced the most dramatic breakthroughs when they pushed through it. It was as if the depth of the doubt directly predicted the height of potential growth on the other side. This observation led me to develop a diagnostic approach I call doubt triangulation. In this system, I would observe a student's doubt response from 3 distinct perspectives: their verbal expression of doubt, their physical manifestation of doubt, and their behavioral adaptation to doubt. Where these 3 observations converged, revealed the true source of their doubt, which was almost never what the student themselves identified as the cause. A student might verbally express doubt about their physical strength, but their body might reveal tension patterns associated with fear of judgment, while their behavior might show avoidance of situations requiring spontaneity rather than strength. This triangulation would reveal that their true doubt centered not on capability, but on social perception, a completely different challenge requiring a completely different intervention. This approach required me to become a scientist of doubt, to observe it with precision rather than merely attempting to overcome it with force of will. And it revealed something profound. Doubt is rarely a monolithic entity. It is a complex ecosystem of interlocking physical, mental, and emotional patterns, each influencing and reinforcing the others. The master does not simply power through doubt with superior mental fortitude, as Western thinking often suggests. The master deconstructs doubt into its component parts, addresses each individually, and reconstructs a new relationship with uncertainty, one based on investigation rather than resistance. When a student would express doubt about performing a difficult technique, my response was never motivational platitudes about believing in themselves. Instead, I would guide them through a precise analysis. Where in your body do you feel this doubt most strongly? What specific outcome are you uncertain about? What is the smallest element of this movement you could execute with confidence? Through this deconstructive approach, seemingly insurmountable doubt dissolves into a series of manageable questions. The technique that appeared impossible becomes a sequence of small movements, each within reach. The doubt that felt overwhelming becomes a series of specific concerns, each addressable through targeted practice. This is the essence of the dissolution framework, not conquering doubt through superior force, but dissolving it through superior understanding. Not fighting against uncertainty, but investigating it with scientific precision. Not overcoming limitation, but deconstructing it into elements that can be addressed individually and systematically. The Western mind tends to approach doubt as an enemy fortress to be stormed. The Eastern mind sees it as a locked room to be carefully unlocked, one tumbler at a time. There have been rumors about private journals I keep. These rumors are true. I call them my midnight manuscripts, writings I create only between the hours of 2 and 4 in the morning, when the world is silent and the mind reaches a different state of clarity. I began this practice during my recovery period. Unable to sleep due to pain, I discovered that these late hours offered a unique mental state, neither fully conscious nor subconscious, but something in between. A liminal space where different rules apply, where different insights become accessible. These manuscripts are not kept hidden out of secrecy, but out of recognition that some explorations are personal laboratories, not meant for exhibition. In them, I've developed methods that might seem strange to outside observers, but have proven invaluable in my relationship with doubt. Chief among these is what I call doubt dialogue writing. In this practice, I use alternating hands to create a written conversation between my confident self and my doubtful self. The right hand writes as confidence. The left hand, my non-dominant hand, responds as doubt. This physiological distinction is crucial. By using the non-dominant hand to express doubt, the process accesses neural pathways not normally engaged in rational thought. The handwriting becomes awkward, childlike, revealing doubts that the conscious mind might otherwise censor or rationalize away. What emerged through this practice astonished me. The doubts expressed by my left hand were rarely what I consciously believed were my concerns. They were deeper, more primal, often connected to early experiences or cultural imprints I had thought long resolved. Even more revealing was that when allowed full expression through this method, doubt often transformed into unexpected wisdom. What began as resistance frequently evolved into insight. What appeared as limitation revealed itself as necessary caution. This practice led me to discover what I call pattern recognition in failure, the ability to identify recurring themes in moments of doubt and perceived failure. By systematically documenting every significant moment of doubt over months, I began to see that what appeared as isolated incidents were actually variations on consistent themes. For example, I noticed that my doubt spiked most intensely, not when attempting something new, as might be expected, but when revisiting something I had once mastered, but had evolved beyond. The doubt wasn't about capability, but about identity. The fear of abandoning a past self that had served me well. This pattern recognition transformed how I approached doubt. Rather than treating each instance as a unique challenge to overcome, I could recognize the recurring pattern and address its root cause. This is far more efficient than repeatedly treating symptoms while ignoring the underlying condition. Through this analytical approach, I developed a concept I call doubt as scout. In military terms, scouts are not the main force, but the advance reconnaissance. They venture into unknown territory first, identifying potential dangers and opportunities before the main force commits. When viewed this way, doubt serves a crucial function. It scouts the boundaries of our capabilities, alerting us to potential pitfalls, forcing us to prepare more thoroughly, preventing reckless advance. The error is not in having these scouts, but in giving them command of the entire operation. They are meant to inform decisions, not make them. This reframing completely altered my relationship with doubt. I no longer attempted to eliminate it, but began to deliberately cultivate certain forms of it, to send my scouts precisely where they could provide the most valuable intelligence. This led to developing what I call the doubt garden philosophy. Just as a garden requires both planting and weeding, cultivating beneficial plants while removing harmful ones, our relationship with doubt requires discernment about which doubts to nurture and which to eliminate. Not all doubt is created equal. Some forms enhance performance and growth, others undermine them. The difference lies not in the intensity of the doubt, but in its focus and function. This understanding led me to develop the three-tier doubt hierarchy. At the first tier is what I call foundational doubt, questioning basic assumptions and fundamental principles. This form of doubt is not merely useful, but necessary for any evolution in understanding. The martial artist who never questions the foundations of their art becomes a prisoner of tradition rather than an innovator within it. I regularly set aside time specifically to doubt the most basic aspects of my practice. What if the principle of centerline I've built my system around is fundamentally flawed? What if the assumptions about energy efficiency that underlie my approach are incorrect? This foundational doubt prevents conceptual calcification and enables breakthrough thinking. The second tier is procedural doubt, questioning methods and techniques rather than foundations. This form of doubt drives refinement and optimization. Is this the most efficient way to achieve this outcome? Are there unnecessary elements in this technique? Could the sequence be improved? Procedural doubt is the engine of technical evolution. Without it, methods become rituals, performed with precision but without understanding. Every significant technical innovation in my system emerged from sustained procedural doubt applied to conventional techniques. The third tier, however, is identity doubt, questioning basic capability and worthiness. This form of doubt is rarely productive and often destructive. Am I capable of mastery? Do I deserve success? These questions attack the foundation of action itself, rather than directing action toward improvement. Identity doubt must be recognized for what it is, not a scout providing valuable intelligence, but an infiltrator spreading disinformation within your ranks. It must be identified through the patterns it creates and systematically eliminated, not through denial, but through direct confrontation and systematic evidence gathering. Having categorized doubt in this way, I developed what I call intentional uncertainty practice. Deliberately entering territories of unknown outcome with specific intent to encounter and work with doubt. Rather than waiting for doubt to appear during critical moments, this practice seeks it out in controlled circumstances. For example, I would sometimes train while deliberately wearing a blindfold, not to develop fighting without sight, as some mistakenly believed, but to intentionally create uncertainty about spatial relationships. This manufactured doubt created the perfect laboratory to practice moving through uncertainty, rather than being frozen by it. Or I would intentionally study disciplines entirely unrelated to martial arts, calligraphy, poetry, dance, specifically to place myself in the position of beginner, where doubt is constant and overwhelming. This practice of regularly returning to beginner's mind keeps the relationship with doubt fresh and conscious, rather than habitual and unconscious. The Western competitive mind often sees doubt as weakness and certainty as strength. The Eastern meditative mind recognizes that certainty is often the greater weakness, as it closes doors to growth that doubt holds open. In this view, doubt becomes not an obstacle on the path to mastery, but an essential component of mastery itself. The question is not how to eliminate doubt, but how to cultivate a relationship with it that serves rather than hinders growth. Not how to silence its voice, but how to integrate its wisdom. Not how to overcome uncertainty, but how to move skillfully within it. My midnight manuscripts contain detailed documentation of this journey, not abstract philosophy, but practical methodology for transforming doubt from adversary to advisor. The path is not about becoming doubtless, but about becoming fluent in uncertainty, able to read its messages accurately and respond to them wisely. If I were to leave behind one practical framework that anyone could apply in their daily confrontation with doubt, it would be what I call the Harmonization system. This approach integrates the philosophical understanding, physical methodology, and psychological insights I've developed throughout my journey. At its core are what I call the 4 recognitions, 4 essential steps that transform our relationship with doubt from adversarial to harmonious. This system can be applied in any situation where doubt appears, from physical performance to creative endeavors to life decisions. The first recognition is locating. Most people experience doubt as an abstract mental state, but doubt always manifests physically in the body. The first step is to locate precisely where doubt appears as physical sensation. Is it tension in the shoulders? A hollowness in the stomach? a tightness in the throat. This location is not random, but reveals the nature of the doubt itself. Doubt about physical capability typically manifests in the chest and shoulders. Doubt about social judgment often appears in the throat and face. Doubt about major life decisions frequently centers in the stomach or gut. By precisely locating doubt's physical anchor, you begin the process of transforming an abstract emotion into a concrete experience that can be addressed directly. The second recognition is voicing. Once located, doubt must be articulated with absolute precision. Vague doubt is impossible to address. Specific doubt reveals its own solution. The practice is to express the doubt in a single, clear sentence that identifies exactly what is uncertain. Not, "I'm afraid I'll fail," but "I'm uncertain whether my current level of preparation is sufficient for this specific challenge." This precision transforms doubt from a cloud of anxiety into a focused question that can be answered through action rather than rumination. The third recognition is countering. Each manifestation of doubt has a corresponding physical counter pattern that directly interrupts its neuromuscular chain. This is not about forcing yourself to feel confident, but about literally rewiring the physical expression of doubt in the moment. If doubt manifests as shallow breathing and raised shoulders, the counter is deliberate diaphragmatic breathing and consciously dropped shoulders. If doubt appears as a clenched jaw and narrowed vision, the counter is a relaxed jaw and intentionally expanded peripheral vision. These physical interventions directly interrupt doubt's ability to perpetuate itself through the body. The final recognition is integrating. This is where Western and Eastern approaches to doubt most dramatically diverge. The Western impulse is to eliminate doubt through counterforce, to replace it with certainty or confidence. The Eastern approach is to integrate doubt's energy rather than opposing it. Integration means absorbing what is useful in the doubt, its caution, its questioning, its demand for preparation, while releasing what is not useful, its paralysis, its circular thinking, its undermining of capability. Like an Aikido master who redirects an opponent's energy rather than opposing it directly, integration channels doubt's energy toward constructive rather than destructive purposes. These four recognitions transform doubt from an overwhelming emotional state into a navigable process. They convert an internal opponent into an internal resource. They change our relationship with uncertainty from adversarial to collaborative. If I were to distill my final wisdom about doubt into a single understanding, it would be what I call the doubt mastery paradox. This paradox states that the highest levels of mastery require not the elimination of doubt, but its elevation and refinement. The beginner doubts their basic capabilities. The intermediate practitioner begins to trust their capabilities, but doubts their readiness for greater challenges. The advanced practitioner trusts their readiness, but doubts whether their approach is optimal. The master trusts their approach, but doubts the very foundations and assumptions of their art. At each stage, doubt doesn't disappear, but evolves. It becomes more precise, more useful, more aligned with growth rather than limitation. The master experiences doubt not less intensely than the beginner, but more precisely and productively. Their doubt operates like a scalpel rather than a club, a precise instrument rather than a blunt force. In my darkest moments of doubt after my injury, I developed a practice I call ancestral confidence. When personal confidence falters, we can draw upon the confidence of our lineage, those who came before us, who overcame similar or greater challenges. I would visualize my father, my teachers, and the generations of practitioners extending back through centuries, all facing moments of profound doubt, all continuing despite uncertainty. Their collective journey became a resource I could access in moments when my individual confidence wavered. This practice acknowledges that confidence need not be generated solely from within. It can be borrowed from those who came before, those who walk alongside, and even from those who will come after. Our confidence exists not just individually, but collectively, across time and relationship. Complementing this backward-looking practice, I developed what I call future self-consultation, the practice of dialoguing with an imagined future version of yourself, who has already navigated the current challenge successfully. In times of intense doubt, I would close my eyes and visualize myself 1 year in the future, having overcome whatever currently seemed insurmountable. I would then engage in dialogue with this future self, asking specific questions about how the path forward unfolded, what unexpected resources emerged, what insights proved most valuable. This practice reveals that doubt is often based on an artificially constrained view of possibility. By consulting the future self, who has already succeeded, we access perspectives and possibilities invisible to our current, doubt-limited vision. The ultimate wisdom I've gained about doubt is what I call the philosophy of beautiful uncertainty. This perspective doesn't merely tolerate uncertainty, but recognizes its aesthetic value and essential role in any meaningful journey. The martial arts performance with no risk of failure has no beauty. The life lived with no possibility of loss has no meaning. The path traveled with no chance of wrong turns has no adventure. Uncertainty is not the enemy of achievement, but the context that makes achievement meaningful. When we truly understand this, doubt transforms from impediment into essential element. The question is no longer how to eliminate uncertainty, but how to move beautifully within it. Not how to escape doubt, but how to express ourselves authentically through it. Like the calligrapher who doesn't fight the ink's natural flow, but incorporates its unpredictable elements into the finished work, the master doesn't fight doubt's natural emergence, but incorporates its energy into their performance and evolution. This perspective doesn't promise doubt-free existence, a promise that would ultimately rob life and achievement of their depth and meaning. Instead, it offers something far more valuable, the ability to find beauty, growth, and even joy in the very uncertainty that defines our human journey. In the end, mastery is not the absence of doubt, but a transformed relationship with it. One where doubt becomes not what stops us, but what deepens, refines, and ultimately elevates our path toward our highest expression.